Julia Smith's short tenure as the NFU's VP of Policy was cut short by wildfires and floods last year. She continues to be an active and passionate member of the NFU Livestock Committee. She also serves as the Executive Director and Project Manager of BC Small Scale Meat Producers Association. She is a determined and outspoken advocate for decentralizing food systems and meat production in particular. She started off as an urban vegetable farmer, but things quickly got out of control after she took a Permaculture Design Course while attending UBC. Before she knew it, she and her partner were raising livestock and had a butcher shop in Vancouver. They moved to the Nicola Valley in order to expand their farming operation, where they now live off-grid, raising critically endangered red wattle hogs and beef cattle. Climate change and extreme weather events have recently moved her into an emergency management role, helping the community and local farmers and ranchers affected by wildfires. Wildfires, flooding, and debris flows. In her spare time, she is finishing up that degree that got sidelined by farming all those years ago and is active on the local search and rescue team. Julia, nice to see you, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you where I work and play on the lands of the Unklakupmuck Nation near Merritt, British Columbia. I wanted to talk to you today about some of the things we've been doing here in BC with the Small Scale Meat Producers Association, just trying to make meat great again. I'm the Executive Director and Project Manager of the SSMPA, as you've already heard, but there's a really great board that works with me, and I was on the board until very recently. I'm on a leave of absence now, but I just want to give a shout out to the people that make this organization run. It's basically a very small core group of us that have been around from the very beginning, and overwhelmingly this organization is volunteer run, and it's pretty incredible some of the accomplishments we've made. Right off the bat, when we first came together about 5 years ago, we were hit by back-to-back government consultation processes around on-farm slaughter, and that this was quickly became our priority goal. As an organization, we're trying to increase opportunities for small-scale meat producers, and we can't do that without addressing the processing problem. So back-to-back consultations, we were absolutely slammed with this, but very happy to report that last year we were successful in getting some legislative changes made, greatly increasing on-farm slaughter opportunities across the province. There's now 2 new classes of license: the basic farm gate license, which allows for up to 5 animal units a year. That's about 5 head of cattle, or 4 times as many pigs. It's 5,000 pounds live weight to be slaughtered on farm. Those animals can be sold at the farm gate, at farmers markets, anywhere in the regional district and within 50 kilometers of the farm, because sometimes if you live like right on the border of a regional district, it's ridiculous that you can't sell to your neighbor across the street. So that was a nice change. The Farm Gate Plus license now allows for up to 25 animal units a year anywhere in the province, and that livestock or that meat can be sold at farm gate, farmers markets, as well as retail outlets and restaurants, butcher shops throughout the whole province. So that was a big change. Previously, in the very small number of regions where you could do on-farm slaughter, you weren't allowed to sell the meat outside of that immediate region. And most of the places where you could do it were very rural and remote. And, you know, to get to where the people are, you need to leave your region. So this was a really big change and a really big win for us. These producers who have these licenses can also do some slaughter for their friends and neighbors. So that was really great news. We are supporting our members, helping them get these licenses, get through the paperwork, and we're currently in the process of putting together a webinar series of how to actually kill livestock, because none of the current training actually prepares you for that. And so we're getting a little more hands-on and demonstrating how to actually do these things. Next slide, please. So our original goal when we founded the association, the first thing we were going to do was do a survey, but we got completely sidetracked by this on-farm slaughter project. But so as soon as that wrapped up, we immediately went into what we'd always wanted to do, which was an industry-wide survey throughout the whole province to quantify the industry, because nobody knows, nobody knew how many people were out there, what they were doing, what they were producing. We had a pretty good idea of what the challenges are, but can't take our word for it. You have to prove it. And so this was a really important next step for us doing this survey. Next slide, please. We were happy to receive funding in part by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and the Government of British Columbia through programs delivered by the Investment Agriculture Foundation of BC. And that's what made this survey possible. Next slide, please. The objective of our survey was filling the gap in knowledge about small-scale meat producers in BC to ensure that challenges to the growth and vitality of the sector are addressed through targeted, informed solutions that take into consideration the unique needs of these producers and their contributions to local food security. Next slide, please. So we got onto it, and this was a big undertaking, and I have to give huge kudos to Corinne Singfield and Ava Reeve, who pulled this off, showed great leadership, assembled a team of regional reps from every region of the province, who went out and brought we had regional reps and regional reps. And so we had broken down to North and South. The regional reps went out into their communities. They knocked on doors. They put up posters at feed stores. They made phone calls. This wasn't just a Facebook campaign. And we made every possible attempt to reach producers, people who weren't on the internet, people that weren't linked into the same networks. And we were really successful in doing that. Next slide, please. So here's what we found. Next slide, please. We had 708 operations represented in this survey, which represented over 2,000 producers from across the province, which is an amazing response, especially when you consider that when we started doing this, we got hit with the worst fire and heat dome season we've ever had. And so in spite of that, this work was important enough to producers to make time for it. Not surprisingly, we found that the top three challenges were access to slaughter, access to cut and wrap, and profitability. Next slide, please. And those challenges were across the board. You see this graph shows access to slaughter being the #1 impediment. And over on the right here, you see it broken down by region, and it was the #1 in every single region. The next, access to cut and wrap, was #2 in every single region except one. And so it's really uniform across the province what is preventing the growth and what's preventing us from taking advantage of the huge demand for well-raised local meat right now. Next slide, please. So profitability was the #3 problem, and obviously everything's connected to everything. And if you look at this, it's quite horrifying that 37% of producers are operating at a loss, 29% at low profit, 25% figure they're breaking even, and only 9% report a moderate profit. And I have to question the source. I mean, farmers and ranchers, they don't count their time. They're notoriously bad at tracking expenses. And so, if someone thinks they're breaking even, I'd like to see how they came up with those numbers. Anyway, even if this is all perfectly accurate, it's still horrifying. Some of the things that were addressed that were mentioned as impediments to profitability have actually been addressed somewhat since we did the survey. There's new regulations that have made it easier to add additional housing on farmland. And we've obviously increased availability of on-farm slaughter. One big thing that has not gone well is lowering feed costs. That is certainly not going well, but we obviously need to continue to work on increasing availability of slaughter services and increasing access to cut and wrap, because we can't increase production until we address those two things. Next slide, please. I think this is going to do some highlighting here. Just keep going until it goes to the next slide. I was supposed to push those buttons when I was talking. Thank you. When asked where people were getting their animals slaughtered, what we saw here was there's a lot of unlicensed slaughter going on. And this is just what was reported. We were really clear that, we're not with the government. And so I feel like we got pretty good engagement on this question. People were pretty honest with us. So you see there's a lot of illegal on-farm slaughter happening, but 53% of those people are interested in the new farm gate license program. So we do have an opportunity here to bring more people into compliance. Next slide, please. So the recommendations from our survey, I'm just going to talk about two of them that we're actively working on right now. You really should read the survey. I'm blasting through this really fast, but it's super interesting. It's on our website. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest recommendations coming out of our survey was that we establish a butcher hub network here in British Columbia. Butcher hubs are whatever that community needs to get meat processing going in that community. It might mean just a cut and wrap because maybe there's an abattoir, but they're not doing cut and wrap, or maybe it's a full inspected abattoir with cut and wrap. Maybe it's just a truck that goes around and does the slaughter because there's lots of local butcher shops that can handle the cut and wrap. So a butcher hub is whatever addresses that bottleneck in that community. The Butcher Hub Network is an umbrella that supports those entities with whatever they need. Meat processing is a highly regulated industry. It's very complicated. There's a lot of rules that you need to learn and a lot of hurdles to overcome. And so the idea with the Butcher Hub Network is instead of everybody reinventing the wheel, we have a repository of information. We have building design plans. We have standard operating procedures. We have training programs in place. We have all of these communications with the regulatory bodies to smooth things out and to make it easier for somebody to take the leap and actually fill one of these gaps. One of the key components of this that we're really excited about working on is establishing relationships with local First Nations. They have the land, they have the cultural appreciation for food and meat processing, and we're hoping that we can get people more engaged, get more jobs in these local communities, more meat processing in rural communities, and build these relationships so that we can unplug this bottleneck and get local meat into our communities and make this a profitable business as it should be. Next slide, please. So one of the first projects that we are taking on under our Butcher Hub umbrella is the Nicola Valley Community Abattoir Project. We recently received $1 million in funding through the SURIP program, and we're getting started with this in partnership with the Coldwater Indian Band. This is a really exciting project. If you watched the news at all last fall, you know where Merritt is. We got hit really, really hard with fires and floods and landslides in the past year. And this is something that's desperately needed by this community. We have a really well-established community of ranchers who have been working here for generations, producing beef. And traditionally, that all gets shipped off to Alberta to be finished, and then we buy it back. So we have the ranches, we have the knowledge. This is a very small pivot to allow people to have greater profitability in their farms and ranches. It's a small abattoir to begin with, but we'll build with growth in mind. 20 animal units a week. We're really excited that the local post-secondary institution, the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology, has expressed an interest in pursuing accreditation towards a butcher certification program. They're right here in this community, and we can work together in the facility and in the school. And for the operations, we are exploring a co-op business model to allow for workers and producers to own the business. So the most important thing for us with this project is we are trying to make something that can be duplicated. Once we get this done, then we can take this model and take it into another community and do it again. And people can work with Coldwater to see what went right for them and how they can implement that in their local communities. So we're really excited about this project. Next slide, please. Another one of our recommendations was that we establish a slaughter truck pilot project to explore the possibility of licensing the slaughter truck operator, not just the producers with the farm gate license. Not all producers want to kill their own animals. In fact, probably most don't. And there's some that probably shouldn't. And so building a network of these mobile abattoirs, it's not an abattoir, it's just a slaughter facility, to cater to those people that don't want to or don't have the skills to process their own animals is a really great way to build compliance. You know, more people are likely to be doing legal slaughter if they can just call the guy to come in, improve animal welfare and meat safety, because these guys are doing this all the time. They're professionals. It's not something they do once a year. And also to make it a really viable business for someone, particularly, you know, you've got a local butcher shop, they could add this as a service to their business and then take the carcasses back to their shop. Next slide, please. So to that end, we're actually working on a mobile slaughter solution up in the Peace. We just got back from a tour of the region. This was actually in McBride, looking at what they're trying to turn into an inspected mobile truck. We met with producers, we met with processors, and just getting a handle on what the unique needs are for the end of the winter, and be going into producing this unit and have it up and running for the fall. Oh good, I'm almost done. My computer's telling me my connection's unstable. So that's kind of a really quick snapshot of what's going on here in BC to increase opportunities for small scale meat producers. Thank you for your attention. I encourage you to check out our website. And if you're in BC, please join us. If you're interested in collaborating, we're always looking at possible collaborations with other folks. And if you know of any sponsorship opportunities, we're always looking for money too. Thank you so much, all. I guess there's going to be questions at the end of these three presentations. So if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Julia. And yeah, it's just interesting. We're here all meeting in person, and I wish for the time when we get to meet you in person, because many of us have sat on a board and committees with Julia over a year, and